Good morning, everyone. My name is Deandra Burrows, and I'm a student at the University of South Florida. And I would like to welcome everyone to the USF Women Leadership in Philanthropy Fall Symposium. And I would also like to thank everyone for joining the Managing Turbulence, Course Correction, Changing Altitude. I'm honored to be able to introduce our moderator, Penny Parks. But before I do, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. As you already know, my name is Deandra, and I'm originally from Lake Rose, Florida. I'm a graduate student at the University of South Florida, and I'm in the pursuit of my Master's of Public Health degree and a concentration in maternal and child health. I chose to attend the University of South Florida because of its commitment and foundation to research, as well as its close proximity to my mother. Upon graduation, I do plan to continue my pursuit in my education for a doctorate of public health, and I do also want to tell you about a little bit of my experiences as a WLP scholar. WLP has given me the opportunity to speak at the annual Fall Symposium with over 300 attendees, be on live TV, meet dynamic women and men, both here within the university system and around the world. I have also spoken at the annual awards dinners, attended athletic events, and the list goes on and on. But perhaps the most significant opportunity that has been awarded to me from being a part of this scholarship is the immense distinction of being called a WLP scholar. This scholarship has also given me experiences that I would cherish for a lifetime and has given me the confidence to walk in the skin I am in and to unapologetically take the world by storm. Now I would like to introduce our moderator, Penny Parks. Penny is a new member of WLP, and she is the president of Links Financial. Spanning a professional career of more than 25 years, Penny has worked for premier firms in the financial industry. And please now join me in welcoming Penny.
Thank you, Deandra. Is she not an amazing speaker? I think you're awesome. That's great. You know, that's the number one fear is public speaking. You just did a great job. So thank you very much. It is my privilege and my pleasure to be here and to be the moderator of this wonderful panel. And I'm just thrilled. We've got some amazing panelists that I've gotten to know really well over the last month or so. And so, you know, I think some of you may have heard this topic before. Years ago, that used to be the social contract was you went to work for someplace and you worked there for your entire working career. And you know, that's really changed. You know, I want to say that the average person will have like 13 different jobs over his or her lifetime. So I mean, I think that whole, social contract, if you go to work someplace and stay there forever, that no longer exists. And so how you manage through that or how you deal with those sorts of changes, is really what's going to make or break each of us. And so I'm just going to briefly tell you my story. I was in corporate America. I thought I went to work for what was then NCNB out of college. In fact, I see one of my buddies who I worked with 20 some years ago. We'll just leave it at that, Gail. And I thought I'd be there forever. And NCNB became Nations Bank, became Bank of America. I ended up leaving there, went to work for a couple of other banks for a while, and then I just thought, I just don't think I can go to work for another stinking bank. I'm just going to have to do something else. And so I ended up starting my own business, and I've had my business. I'm in my 10th year, believe it or not. For some of the people that know me, have known me for a long time, I just can't imagine it's gone on that long. But it's been a great experience, and I help businesses find debt, and I help businesses restructure, and I help sell companies. And it's been a great experience. I employ people here in the Tampa Bay area, and it's been a great ride. But again, all of us, I think, just looking out at all of us in the room, we will change opportunities, and it's just a question of how we're going to handle it. And I think one of the things that's really neat about this particular panel is we've got a mix of stories. We've got people from sort of different aspects of their career. And so I'm going to start just going to tell you a little bit about each of them, and then I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And you guys have all of our bios in your information, so I'm not necessarily going to read you that, but I'm just going to pick out some things that I think are really cool about each of our panelists, and then they can tell you a little bit more. I'm going to start all the way at the end with Miss Emerald Morrow, and she is new to the Tampa Bay area. She's only been here for a short period of time, but she's already made an impact in the short amount of time that she's been here. She comes from Michigan, and again, this is, and there's other folks here in the audience that were in a similar situation. You graduate from college, you do all the things that you're supposed to do, the job market's supposed to open up for you. Well, unfortunately, if you happen to be one of those people that graduated during, the worst recession we've ever experienced in our history, that whole world changed. And so, without further ado, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Again, my name's Emerald, and I work for Channel 10. But to kind of pick up where Penny left off, so I came out of school in 2008, and that was the worst time in the last few years possible to come out of school. I went to Northwestern University, which is a really prestigious journalism institution and institution overall out of Chicago, Evanston, Illinois. And I graduated with my bachelor's and master's degree in journalism, aspirations of going and being a reporter. Did not happen when I came out. I remember packing up my apartment. I was in D.C. over that summer and was watching the news, and what I was watching was the day that Lehman Brothers was failing, and I was like, oh crap. This is not good for me. I just knew that this was not going to help me in any aspect. So needless to say, I was a child of the recession. The face that you see that in the magazines and newspapers, kids that had to move back home. I had to move back home. I moved back into my parents' home and really struggled with, where do I go from here? I could not find an on-air position. No one was hiring. So it took a lot to really try and overcome that, and we'll get more into that. I know we have to get to some other introductions, but that's a little bit about my story. Long story short, I did overcome that, and again, we'll talk more about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Emerald. Want to introduce our next panelist, and again, you can also read her bio, but I have sort of a personal connection now to Miss Jackie. Jackie Dharna started No Mo Nausea. Okay, so anesthesiology background. Okay, that was her business. She's going to tell you why she started the company, but you'll notice all of us are wearing these. And this will keep you from getting nauseous if you have different points in your life. So I'm going to tell you my personal story. I'm at that point in my life where I have to have a colonoscopy on a regular basis. Maybe some of you can relate. So I went to have my colonoscopy, and they put you under. You get anesthesia, and in the past I've gotten sick from the anesthesia, and so I wore this, and she'll tell you all about it, and it kept me from getting nauseous. And so there I am at Memorial Hospital before they put me under, and I'm telling the doctor, and I'm telling all the nurses and everyone at Memorial Hospital, y'all need to get this for all of your patients because it's an amazing product. In fact, it's such an amazing product, it was the surgical product of the year. And so without further ado, Miss Jackie, tell them a little more about it, because I didn't do it justice.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Dharna. I'm the CEO and medical inventor of the No Mo Nausea Band, the first and only natural way to stop nausea, vomiting, and headaches instantly. So imagine a life with a comfortable pregnancy, an enjoyable day at sea, a better quality of life for those who are undergoing chemotherapy, all the way through to just a headache-free day. So that's what the No Mo Nausea Band can offer you. And as Penny had stated, coming from an anesthesia background, I am a biomedical physicist as well as a chemist from the University of South Florida. Woo woo, go Bulls. I was a cheerleader there as well. But when I came out, obviously, I have two loves in my life, and I joke that when we talk about guidance and turbulence, I have two different North Poles, my magnetic North Pole and my geographic North Pole. And so for me, a magnetic North Pole is something that you can use tools such as a compass, and it guides you, such as tools, ancillary material, and that's how I got into anesthesia. And I love my career as a professional and an anesthesia practitioner. But it wasn't until I realized that there is this lack in the market for something that helped me personally, as well as make sure that you don't get sick. And so it's been able to extend to now it's in medical distribution in 7 countries of the world, and it's only been 14 months since I invented this company. So the anesthesia, the actual American dream is still alive and thriving, and regardless, I'll kind of give you guys more information on how I made that change, but it's just proof that through people, they really push you. And just like her story, again, they push you to do great things, even things that you never thought possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. And last, but certainly not least, Dara Chenevert. She's a baby boomer like me. She's going to tell you a little bit about that, and just sort of, every generation sort of, has expectations or expectations that are put on you. And so, she tried to, like I did, we all tried to live up to what those expectations were. But again, then the world changed. And so she's going to tell you a little bit about her story.
Well, thank you, Penny, and I am very pleased and proud to be part of this panel and to have been invited to be here. As Penny mentioned, I am a baby boomer, and I'm sitting here with two very amazing millennial young ladies. So I do feel like the old hen in the coop.
Oh, stop.
But to that point, I think there is a story that resonates with a lot of us. I think to Penny's introduction, as a baby boomer, we grew up with certain goals. We were to be educated. We were to be gainfully and actively employed. We were to pursue professional occupations. We were expected to marry, to have families, and to live happily ever after, and to be valuable contributors to our society, right? So what happens when all of those things don't go exactly as planned? And I think because of our generation as baby boomers, we've experienced a lot of course corrections that have impacted our lives in professional and personal capacities. Personally, I was a very hard-charging labor and employment management lawyer who was battling litigation in arbitration and labor law matters for at least 10 years before relocating to Tampa. And the market I was advocating in was predominantly, if not completely, male-oriented. And so then my husband decided to leave me, and again, my second husband. And I use that phrase very jokingly because he relocated to Tampa to pursue a better career opportunity for himself. For a year, we had a commuter marriage, after which point he said, "Do you think you might come down to join me?" And so after a year passed, I said, "I think I might." I relocated here and reinvented myself from a labor and employment lawyer to a human resources professional. And I have to tell you, I immediately thought, how hard can this be? How many human resources professionals out there?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not being facetious. It was a culture shock and an eye-opener, and it required every skill set I had ever learned as a labor and employment attorney. So just a little bit of a preview of some of the course corrections and changes we've done to manage the turbulence and to correct our altitude. So thank you, Penny.
Thanks, Dara. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of break this up into a couple different parts. I'm going to ask a couple questions having to do with each of those. So kind of first off, we're going to talk about, what was the course correction? And they've kind of given you a little bit of a preview of what that is. So we'll just speak about that briefly. Then we're going to talk about how do you manage that turbulence? And then thirdly, we're going to talk about, what are your takeaways? And so, what is it, because, we're so thrilled that you all are here this morning. We want you all to get, what are the nuggets that you all can get out of what's happened to these folks, very real stories that, you yourself may be experiencing. So I'm going to start off with, again, identifying the course correction. I'm going to start just because you're all the way at the other end, but I'll switch it up too, Miss Everett, okay? So did you see the change coming? Was it unexpected? Again, back to the whole you were expecting, you did all the things you were supposed to do right. Did you see it coming? And then what'd you do?
Absolutely. No, not at all. You don't see that coming when you are raised to do everything right. You go to school, you're accepted to a very good school, you work hard, you go on to graduate school, you're expecting to go on and get into the field that you studied. So the recession hit. That did not happen, as I explained. So during the period where I had to move back home, there was a lot of self-doubt. There was a lot of, for a period, a lot of crying, a lot of, when you go through something that you see your peers they're succeeding and they're going forward in whatever it is that they want to do, and you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? And the truth is that I was not doing anything wrong at all. So it took a lot of mental toughness is what you basically have to have, and that applies to anything that you do when you are going through something that requires a lot of change. You have to have a lot of mental toughness, and you have to have a lot of discipline. So for me, it was really looking within myself and saying, well, even though I'm on this detour, what can I do in this dark hour, so to speak, to still stay on my path? Because tough times don't always last. The cliche goes, tough people do. So you have to be a tough person. So what I did, with a lot of support from my family, especially my father, who I'm very, very close with, I took jobs that were still within the journalism industry, although I was not on air. And sometimes you might have to do that. You can never think that a job or a position is beneath you. You have to sometimes take what you need to take and just realize that the skill set that you're building at that moment is going to help you in the future. So I worked at a television station in St. Louis behind the scenes, and what that did for me was it allowed me to network with a lot of people that I still keep in touch with today, who are still mentors to me in my career. I started freelancing and doing some magazine writing, and as a result of that, my articles have appeared in the Huffington Post. They've appeared in USA Today. They've appeared in Black Enterprise magazine. I did some work with school children, and that didn't have anything to do with my career, but it was an aspect of my life that was important to me. And so now when I'm covering different stories, I understand different parts of the community a lot better. I also identify and understand people who have had struggles in their lives, and I'm able to tell those stories a lot better. So all of those things that I was doing, although I was not where I wanted to be, prepared me so well that when I did get my first on-air position, which was about 3.5 years ago, I was really well prepared for what I was to do. And that allowed me, from there, I went on to do things. I've covered the Oscars, I've covered the Grammys, I've covered the Rose Bowl, and one of the most high points in my career was winning an Emmy for a story that I did that changed some state law in Michigan. So I'm proud of those things. And again, I just want to encourage anybody out here who is going through anything and they're experiencing some turbulence in your own path. Remember to build that mental toughness. Whatever it is that you need to do to build that skill set, still focus on your vision. Do whatever it is you can where you are to prepare yourself, because those tough times won't last, and you want to be as well prepared as you can when your next opportunity comes.
Thanks, Emerald. Thanks. So Jackie, your change, you spoke a little bit about what kind of prompted you to do this, but if you could just maybe elaborate on that a little bit more.
Sure. They always say that invention is bred or comes out of necessity. So my life looked very different just one short year ago. I was an anesthesia care provider making a wonderful living, pregnant with our second child, and I thought, oh, this pregnancy will be a snap, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, was rushed into the emergency room. I had an emergency C-section, and literally the second she came out, I just started getting very ill. It allowed me to be able to understand my patients and sometimes what they go through and how horrible it was. I wasn't able to enjoy my daughter. So what I did was, after them giving me all the drugs and nothing else worked, I basically went back to Eastern medicine practices that we learned in anesthesia school, applying acupressure and peppermint leaves or peppermint essential oil. I never had those leaves when I needed them, so I finally taped them around my wrist and said, this would be a great band. In between breastfeeding, when quite honestly, you guys know that you don't sleep, I wrote my provisional patent because no one in the world had ever combined the two. And in doing so, when I took that kind of leap of faith for my own company, and as I told you guys, it's very recent, when in anesthesia, I believe that helping people is my ultimate goal and mission, but I can only help one-to-one. Whereas now with my product, I get these testimonials, whether it's from cancer patients or mothers who are finally able to enjoy their pregnancy and cherish that moment, all the way through to others, such as executives say, man, I had this horrible meeting, I was feeling bad, but at least it got me through it and I was able to continue to go to work. So now I can help hundreds, thousands, and hopefully millions very soon in order to help them get a better status of life, a better quality. And in doing so, I believe that, again, just because you look like you're wandering doesn't always mean that you're lost. And that being said, I never thought that my 7 to 5, so in the hospital, and then my 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. in my company would ever turn to where I was 100% on my company. But it has. And you can do it. And with the help of everybody else around you, I always say that business is the business of people, not products or services. So look around you, and believe it or not, those are the women that are going to help you through, even when the times seem tough.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. So Dara, even if you saw the course correction coming, even if you knew that change was amiss, what were the signs, or what could you tell us that could help others to know when that time is? What's that old saying? You need to know when it's time to leave. What help us with that?
Penny, that's an excellent question, and I've had many course corrections in my life and career, but I am going to focus just on the immediately past one that I mentioned earlier. And I think when it's time to make that course correction, because certain things start to feel unnatural to you. And it goes back to my common theme, my number 2 prospect of the benefit of fear. I have 3 precepts. Number 1 is the gift of authenticity. You need to embrace authenticity because you can only do you. I can only do me. The second is the benefit of fear, understanding how it proves to be a very powerful motivator for you, how it controls both your physiological and your psychological responses to how you are met with stimuli that are stressful and or intimidating. And the third is the reset button and knowing when to press it. So quite frankly, when I felt that circumstances were becoming a bit out of whack, feeling unnatural, I was working way too hard. I was litigating day and night, preparing and working. My husband was enjoying a brand new career in sunny South Florida, and I was still in wonderfully woeful Michigan in the winter. That's when you know that you need to reevaluate your course and establish some sensibility to where you're going to go next. So that kind of got me off the dime, and by, I guess he originally relocated here in August of 2004. By October of 2005, I relocated behind him in an effort to start that new life here in Central Florida. And so with that being said, I really didn't want to practice law anymore because that previous year had been so frenetic. And of course, it was frenetic because I let it be frenetic, because my husband wasn't with me every day. So the quality of my life got kind of skewed. I poured myself into the work. I was highly successful, which of course then in turn is a cycle because it motivates you to not want to change your circumstances when you know you should. And so making that course correction and following my husband here was dependent on my personal values, again, as a baby boomer, that I had to be gainfully, professionally, and esteemingly employed when I got here. So I found a fabulous job again as a human resources executive for county government, and I thought, woohoo! Not a big transition. Labor and employment lawyer, HR professional. Again, how hard can it be, right? And again, I found that it is so much more demanding than anyone would have anticipated, and certainly me. And so those 3 tenets that I espouse became very important. The benefit of authenticity, being yourself, because you have to realize when you need to hold them and when you need to fold them. And you need to be very aware that you have certain values, skills, and attributes that other people don't have. So that's important. The second being, of course, the benefit of fear. That is a great motivator because it invokes the fight or flight autonomic response that comes from the amygdala in the brain. So you can either use it successfully to your advantage or you can be crippled from it. And it goes back to Emerald's theme about the determination to get somewhere. And the gift or benefit of fear is really good for that. And then the third tenet, which is if all else fails, know when to hit the reset button, which goes back to having a plan B, your exit strategy, and knowing when the party's over and it's time to go home. So Penny, I hope that
did.
answers your question.
And so sort of going along those lines, we're going to go kind of to the next part of it, and that's sort of managing the turbulence. And you all sort of, gave us a little bit of a preview to how you did manage the turbulence. I mean, I know, Everett, you mentioned that your mental toughness really helped you, and you also said stay in your profession. Maybe not exactly where you want to be within your profession, but stay in your profession, and find other opportunities that can still help you develop and those sorts of things. So along those lines, managing the turbulence. No one's ever prepared for those. That's kind of what we've all agreed to. No, you're never prepared for these things. But having said that, what are the steps that you took to get through this? You mentioned a couple of them. So I'm going to start with Jackie on this question. How did you, what steps did you take to get through it? How did you land on your feet? And and really, frankly, what was the toughest part? What's been the toughest part for you, Jackie, starting this new endeavor?
Absolutely. So coming from a background, I don't have an MBA behind my name, but let me tell you, I got one in the trenches real quick when you use your own money, that's for sure. So as a true bootstrapping company to where there's no financial investors, it's basically me, this idea, and I won Tampa Chamber's Startup Scholar, which is the Entrepreneur of the Year just for 2015. I was in my award speech, and all of a sudden they introduced me as an entrepreneur. I went home and said, I need to look up the definition of this. So the Latin word actually means to push forward. And I believe that being an entrepreneur, to be able to have that mindset, to go completely outside of what you're accustomed to, was the hardest part. Because I was taught books, study, do well, get reward. Being an entrepreneur, you have to kind of see almost as a psychic power to predict the business trends and then implement change prior to it actually occurring. So I always tell people, as an entrepreneur, especially as an inspiring, if you've ever had an idea or just think that a service is out there and you can do it better than someone else, people are always afraid, well, how is the money going to come? I always say, add value, and the actual revenue will come right after. So the hardest part for me was translating that idea from an idea, a product. I say that the second I had my actual band, I gasped. What now? What do I do? And the first thing that you can do is rely not just on yourself, but tell people about it, because it's amazing. I mean, I have mentors that are actually sitting in this room who said, what a great idea, let me help you. And accept help, because you can't be the best at absolutely everything. Understand and recognize what you do best, and then surround yourself with people who can do it better than you can, because through osmosis, you'll end up pulling it in. So again, problem, turbulence, the best way to manage an actual problem is to attack it and go head on. Don't look back, because again, you can only move forward by looking into the future, not what's behind you.
Okay. Dara, what was the toughest part of managing the turbulence? What was the toughest part?
I think the toughest part, Penny, was understanding that there will be hard times where you simply have to admit that this is tough. And I think there is a power in understanding when you can self-appreciate the toughness, you know when to ask for help. And as women sitting here today, I need to underscore that for all of us as I sit here with these amazing women whom I'm very proud to have met, and this amazing woman whom I've known for quite some time, an amazing woman back in the back who introduced me to her. It's a support network. And so when you are no longer in control of being able to manage the course correction or changing the altitude, reach out. To Jackie's point, there are wonderful women sitting in this room who are more than happy to be helpful, to mentor, to counsel, or simply to be someone that you can talk to and bounce things off of, to seek advice and counsel, and to confess that we're all human. We're not super women all of the time, although I am wearing my cape today underneath this.
Awesome, thank you. You know, I have about 500 more questions that I can ask these fabulous women, but I wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask questions as well. And so I believe that Chris and Anne Marie have a microphone that they will, if you want to just raise your hand, we're going to ask you to speak into the microphone. And the reason for that is we're taping this for posterity. And so we want to be able to hear your question in addition to the answer. So yes, ma'am, there's a question up here in the front. And so while Chris runs up here to now allow you to ask your question into that fancy microphone. All right, great.
Thank you. First of all, I'm so inspired by you women. You are amazing. I'm just blown away. You guys are incredible speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. The question I have is a question that I asked my mentor a couple of weeks ago. Is I feel like there's so many things I love to do. I want to do everything. I want to start a business. I want to run a nonprofit. I want to pursue a music career. I want to do everything.
Right. Good for you. Good for you.
And one of the things I struggle with is I feel like I'm where I want to be in my life, but how do I pursue all the other things as well on top of what I'm doing now? I'm struggling with that.
If I can take this, my husband's actually extremely supportive and sitting in the back of the room. And he always tells me from the movie Blade, focus, Trinity. So I want to do it all as well. And I know exactly how that feels. And being able to give back through philanthropy, in doing so. So for example, my company, every October, we do for breast cancer awareness. I'm the first woman in my entire mom's side of the family who hasn't contracted breast cancer at 30. So it runs in my family. I have a huge family history. So what we do is for every sale that we make at nomonaja.com, we donate a band. So buy a band, give a band is our big thing. And you do have information and coupons or whatnot inside of your bag. But when you're able to excel at something, do it and do it well and do it with all your heart, because then you have the ability to incorporate philanthropy. And I know for me, number one, it's helping to bring awareness to my company, but as a secondary note, I get to help so many more people and touch them through philanthropic endeavors that I wouldn't have that opportunity if I didn't do my company well. So that's why we launched a dog product, for example, so that regardless if you buy a human or a pet product, we'll still donate for those who are undergoing cancer. So I hope that helps you a little bit.
Awesome. Great.
Can I jump in too for a quick
Certainly.
second?
Absolutely.
I'll be brief, but I just wanted to say, to piggyback off of what you said, yes, focus is absolutely the number one thing. You got to have laser focus. And I would encourage you to write everything out that you want to do. Every single thing, it doesn't matter how crazy the dream is, write it out. And then from those things, take each one and say, what do I need to do to accomplish it? Give yourself a time frame. Prioritize each thing, because you won't be able to do every single thing right away. But prioritize it and maybe make a little calendar. In 6 months, I'm going to take this step to meet this goal. And check your progress every month, every week if you have to. But you have to be focused to do that, because it's so easy to get off track and you're doing this, you're doing that, and you forget about things. But if you can hold yourself accountable and maybe even have someone else help hold you accountable. But list out those things and just maybe say, okay, from now, October to December, this is what I want to accomplish for the rest of the year, and this is what I'm going to do to get it. Now, I need you or my best friend or whatever to make sure that you help keep me accountable. So focus, accountability, write out what you want to do, and take steps to get there.
Can I add one other thing?
Certainly.
Hi. These ladies are phenomenal, and I appreciate the perspective that they bring, so I'm just going to try and weave a bridge here. These are excellent words of advice. Laser focus, also making a list of things and setting your objectives on a timetable. Let me tell you something that's going to be a shortcut in terms of time. Finding synergistic bridges between your goals, because it makes it very easy to walk from one thing to the next thing when you have a bridge. So if you want to be in the music and entertainment business, then build a synergy with that as a nonprofit, or build a synergy between your nonprofit and being an entrepreneur, and then exploit that bridge you've created from that synergy. It makes life a lot easier than moving. Does that make sense? All right.
And last thing to throw in, mentors are critical. Find someone who's successful in your field or whatever it is you want to do. Find someone, just ask them if you can shadow them for a day, spend some time with them, pick their brain a little bit, and see how they've built their bridges.
Awesome. Because you know the difference between a plan and a dream is it's written down. Right? Okay. There's a question right up here in the front.
Okay, this is a little different, but if there's been lots of course corrections, like you've worked, you've had a career, you've taken time off because of illness or raising children, and you've also been a volunteer for a time too, and now considering re-entering the work field. But there's been lots of gaps. So there's been lots of different course corrections that you need to go through. Any advice on what to do next?
Can I take that
Yeah.
one? Good for you.
Great question.
And you're not a millennial.
And you're not a millennial.
Not a millennial.
Great question.
It is a great question, and in responding to that, again, I go back to the first tenet, authenticity. I hire a lot of people. I interview a lot of people. I read a lot of resumes. And I have to tell you is that your story is not unique. It is the state of play that we're dealing with in this economy after, as to Emerald's point, we're still recovering from the worst recession we've ever experienced. Be honest about it, and also turn those experiences into positives, because you have grown, matured, and developed experiences as a result of everything that you've done. And yes, there have been gaps in terms of the continuity of doing the same thing for a long period of time. But what you have acquired is an amalgam of experiences and skill sets that have, I just ate the mic, and skill sets that are unique to you. And I don't know where you did your volunteering opportunities, but certainly volunteering is different in every facet of the volunteer world. So I would take inventory of all of the skills that I've acquired, and I would be my own brand ambassador to market those skills and to make people understand, as you matriculate to the next point, that you would be disappointed in not appreciating the skills that I would bring to what I have to offer your entity, organization, business, whatever position it is that you're seeking. Authenticity, embrace it. You are who you are because of what you've done.
That's great, Dara. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, you guys are all great. Fantastic. Kudos to the panel and all the questions. So today in the Tampa Bay Times, there was an article that the job growth has come at the expense of moving jobs from other states. The top economist for the state has said that we need to help small businesses grow organically. And with that, I ask all of you, are we doing enough as a state, a city, to help small businesses grow? Jackie, great for you to answer this, but of course, all of you in your fields as well. And can we do more? And how can we do more?
So
Another great question. Thank
Absolutely. Mayor Buckhorn has been phenomenal with me. Not just being my cheerleader number one, or talking about, my Hispanic heritage as, the true perseverance of American dream and being a millennial and keeping me here. But he's done an amazing job of assuming this culture, because it's not just myself. I myself found out as soon as I became an entrepreneur with a consumer product as a mompreneur. I then immediately met 15 other women who did the exact same thing, who ranged from being school teachers to inventors, all the way through organic chemists to creating a Band-Aid. That being said, all of these amazing women, I believe we have a culture where we want to keep, and we want to keep our children, because that's really what grounds us here. I know that my husband and myself, we have 2 beautiful children. I do think that we do need to do a little bit more in terms of attraction. And I think that Jeff Fennick has done a great job. Once we revamp everything, we create this lively culture to where, stay here, play here type of phenomenon, that it'll do an even more job at attracting. But the Tampa Chamber, getting involved, there are so many different aspects. I know coming as a USF grad, I'm invited to things every day. I could literally be at a different event. But I do have to say that we need to do something when it comes to our transit, because... So
Dara will clap
I'm not
for
going to
that.
get onto that. I have a lot of friends who are on many different boards in regards to that, but I think they're doing a great job. So let's entice people to come here, stay here, play here, and be an entrepreneur, be a business here, a true business. Start it, hire it, grow it, and cultivate it.
Great, thank you.
I have
I was
something.
gonna say, I'm just gonna add in something as well. As I own my own business as well, I think to piggyback on what Jackie said, I think that for small businesses, there are things that are out there to help small businesses, but part of it is just to know how to navigate that. For instance, I do a lot of in our company, we help small businesses get a lot of SPA financings, which are a great tool for small businesses. It's just hard for small businesses to know how to navigate those sorts of things. I don't know what the answer is to help businesses, except for come to me to help you navigate those kinds of things. But it's hard for small businesses to know that. Or for instance, we just had to go through and do our all of our benefits, because there's 5 of us, but I offer healthcare benefits, which is obscenely expensive for 5 people, in case you're wondering. But we do it, okay. But how do you go about how do you know, how do I know I'm getting a good deal? How do I go about doing that? Because we're such a small little, we're not real exciting to the insurance carriers because we're just a small little company. So just ways to know how to navigate things, that would be helpful to a small business owner.
And I'd like to piggyback as well, is that I think everyone sitting here who is a small business owner is familiar with SPE programs, minority and women-owned businesses. Heart, for example, has a disadvantaged business enterprise platform. We're now expanding that to include single women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses, to include that as an expansion of the disadvantaged business enterprise portion of our procurement. Those opportunities probably are not as clearly publicized as they could be, but they're out there. And certainly, again, it goes back to networking and speaking with other women who are similarly situated or in other areas of expertise who can open those doors and assist you in developing those opportunities. We're going to buy a bunch of nausea bands.
That's right.
Yes, we are. Yes,
For our wellness program where I work, and hence a synergy has been created.
Great.
I want to add one thing, if I may. And I also want to piggyback off of you with the women and minority-owned business topic. But during the time that I was trying to get my on-air position, as I mentioned, I did a lot of freelance writing, and I covered entrepreneurship for a magazine, national magazine. And one of the biggest issues that entrepreneurs have is access to capital. So if you don't come from a family that has a lot of money, or you have your own financial challenges, or you may have credit challenges and things like that, it can be really, really difficult to get a loan, get access to capital. It's really, really difficult. So I think that a lot more can be done in terms of educating entrepreneurs on how they can get access to capital, how they can build their credit scores and things like that to get that financing, and also more networking opportunities, especially for minorities in their businesses, because women and particularly minorities, and in particular African Americans as well, just because the cultural capital lacks. And if you come from an area where you're impoverished, or you just don't have the access to those resources, it's difficult if you don't know anybody else who runs a business. So I think business incubators, accelerators, and things like that, and also entrepreneurship education in our schools would be great to get kids thinking about entrepreneurship as well.
Thanks, everyone. I agree with that. We have a question here.
Hi, I want to first of all applaud you all for what you said today. I'm Bevan Rogel, the founder of Encore Tampa Bay, and everything that you said really resonates with the research and what we're doing with Encore on a national basis. And we're creating a network of organizations and resources to help people discover what their Encore is, retool for their Encore, and to connect to each other and all of those things. I wanted to just jump in on the entrepreneur. I'm very excited to say next week we are launching our first ever entrepreneurial asset map. Thank you to Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. This is a community-owned resource. So don't look at it now because there's bugs in it. But next week, look at it. It's called mystartuptampabay.com. And everything that you just talked about, from meetups to financing to all of those. And in fact, a big shout out to the Center for Women. They have a women's entrepreneurship center that is awesome. It's part of the SPA. But we really are committed to creating organizations and resources to help people really do what you all have done. And you did it on your own, and we want to help other people do that as well. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thanks, Bevan. Do we have a question? Any more questions? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Got one in the back there.
I don't really need it. My name's Jenny. Right now I'm working at Grow Financial. Every job I've ever had, I've kind of fallen into. People wanted me for my skills. People wanted me for my skills, but after a while I never feel fulfilled. So what advice do you have for finding direction?
I think you have to just not look at things in terms of your career, but just in your life. What are you passionate about? What is it that you as a person, if you could do anything that in the world and you would get $100,000 a year to do it, anything, what would that be? What would you pursue if money weren't a factor? And you think about those things and then you try to figure out what career you can get into or what you can do, even if it's starting your own business. And I think that when you're doing something that you love, you're going to be fulfilled. And maybe not every single day with what you do. I love what I do. Every day is not easy. I get up at 2 o'clock every morning to be on the air at 5. So that's difficult. But
So you slept in this morning, is that right?
So, I would just take inventory of the things that you as a person are passionate about.
I know that for me, again, I love being a clinician. I do. But it came to the fact that even when I was there, there was just this drive and passion that it was like I was so thirsty, and regardless of how much water I drank inside the OR, there was just something else. I feel not everybody gets bonked on top of the head and says, hey, this is a great idea, why don't you start a company, invent this. But there are things that go about your life, and whether that's you're at the grocery store and you just have this idea and it keeps popping up, or something like whether it is you're reading a sign. I had somebody today tell me, I saw your bands, I heard it on the radio, blah, 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 and then I was excited because I knew I was going to see you. So just little entities like that, don't discard them. Take a look at them for what they could potentially be, not what they are right now.
And I just add, Jenny, what is the specific skill set that you have been so blessed with having fallen into job after job for?
Attention to detail, organization, reliability.
Is that something you enjoy, those attributes? You hesitated on the answer. And see, that's what I wanted to bring out, because what each of these ladies here knows is that what you're doing doesn't come because you discovered it's something you like to do. Something you're doing that you love to do is because you decided that's what you wanted to do. It's not the tail wagging the dog, it's the dog wagging the tail. So my advice to you would be to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with yourself, because you can only do you, right? And figure out, to Emerald and Jackie's point, where is your true north? What motivates you? What gets you excited? What do you enjoy doing? And then apply those wonderful skill sets that keep you gainfully employed to what you want to do. and you'll find the love and the passion in doing what you're doing. I love my job as well. Hear the common theme here? Okay.
And then maybe just try to also free yourself of the pressures. I don't know if it's family, friends, or whatever. We often have these expectations that are placed on us that you should be this, or you should be that, or you should go into this field because it makes a lot of money, or you should do that. Starting out, my first journalism position, I'm not even going to tell you how much money I didn't make in that first position. Like, it was hard, but it was a sacrifice that I was willing to make to get where I am today. And sometimes you have to make those sacrifices. Everybody's not able to make a financial sacrifice, and I understand that. I was able to do that. It was not easy. But sometimes you have to make those sacrifices to get where you want to be.
Do you have a question? While y'all are thinking of your next question, I want to ask each of you all. So we've talked about a couple of different things. We've talked about authenticity. We've talked about having an exit strategy. We've talked about asking for help. We've talked about a support network. We've talked about mental toughness. We've talked about staying in your profession. We talked about planning versus dreaming. We talked about focus. We talked about excel at something, excel at something, and then you can be philanthropic. So I don't want to give away like all of the things that you were going to say, but if you were going to give these folks in the room today a takeaway, what is it that, what 3 things or 2 things, or what could they take away, your final topic or thought as to that could help these folks? Start with you, Ms. Dara.
I'm going to be very brief. Get comfortable in your own skin. If you're not there yet, that's the motivator that keeps you centered, grounded, focused, all of the things that Penny just mentioned. If you don't like who you are, if you don't do you well, if you want to do someone else and you're not doing you because of it, that's a problem. Get comfortable in your own skin. Find your true north, change your altitude, course correct, and be sure that you know who you are, because that focuses your attention and your success on whatever you apply yourself to.
Thanks, Dara. Jackie?
Being a daughter of a Peruvian immigrant, a true mother who is looking to feed her children, as well as a dream, an envision, a dream, an inventor. You can do what you would like to do. No one is withholding, no one steps back. You have to be your own true guide, because no one else is going to do it for you. There are people to help you along the way, but ultimately, I stand here before you to prove that the American dream is alive and thriving, and I'm proof of it. So, again, be an American, go out there, and really grasp it for what it's worth, because there's no other country in the world that's like ours here. Again, I'm Jacqueline Dharna with No More Nausea, the only natural way to stop nausea now. Thank you guys. No, I really appreciate being here.
It really works too.
I would say to remember to sow good seeds in your darkest hour. And be careful of the seeds that you plant, because you're not going to plant apple seeds and get an orange tree. So even during those darkest times, what are you doing to still push yourself to that next level? Are you still sharpening your skills? Are you still working to network? Are you still meeting people? Are you still growing? Are you still attending professional development conferences, and whatever aspect that might be? But even when things are tough, you don't stop growing. You don't just quit life. Like, it continues to go forward. And I would also just say, never lose sight of your vision, because that will keep you and guide your path even when times are tough. So you have to, again, have that true north. That's like internal. You got to know that and what's inside of you, because that's going to guide you when all these other external pressures are pushing on you from outside in the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists, and I'm going to turn it back over to our fabulous
Thank you.
USF.
Thank you.